Hi, I'm Richard Morais, Senior Minister at Unity of Phoenix Spiritual Center, and I want to thank you for visiting our website and for tuning in to today's message. If you feel inspired by today's talk, I really encourage you to make a donation by hitting that button below and making a contribution to this ministry. It'll allow us to continue these messages online and to do the great work we do here at Unity of Phoenix, which is to inspire people to live better lives. So thanks for tuning in, thanks for your support, and we hope to see you at a Sunday real soon.
Okay, so the question that I have for you is, how happy are you? And what I want you to see is that I think your happiness, by and large, is a relationship to how much you really believe in God. Maybe I mean the good news and the bad news, right? Is that when we're freaked out, does anybody still get freaked out about anything? Great, you're my people. Thank you, right? When we get freaked out, and that's a spiritual term, it's somewhere in Leviticus, I think, Moses said something about when we get freaked out. But when we get freaked out, are we standing in our faith in those moments? No, we're freaked out. Our hair's on fire. It's like there is no God in that moment. And what I want you to see is that by and large, a lot of us were raised by people who were pretty freaked out, right? Did anybody else have parents that sometimes got freaked out, right? And even if they're in the room, they still got freaked out, right? My mom's not here tonight, so I felt confident I could say that, right? But what I want us to really look at is how much your happiness is a statement of your faith. And for the next 7 weeks, if your happiness is usually here, I want it to go here. And if you get to here and get comfortable with that, then I want it to go up to here. I want you to play with your happiness because I'm really committed to us experiencing the ecstasy of God. Like there is a level where those souls who feel the presence of God in a profound way, like unleash this incredible ecstasy upon themselves because they're not freaked out anymore. They just don't get freaked out. They just move in this realm of profound happiness. And that we think that the sign of really being one with God is that we can walk on water or we're turning water into wine, which is a good party trick. I mean, it is, you get invited to a lot of parties if you can turn water into wine. But the underlying thing is, how happy are you? How deeply, profoundly happy are you? And are you willing to be happier than maybe you've ever been before? Because to really be happy, we have to start kind of unwinding ourselves. We have to look at some of the things that we think and believe, and we have to kind of start looking at some of our own craziness. Because our craziness rarely makes us happy, even if we think it's 100% right. Have you ever been really 100% right and still unhappy? And just because you're right and unhappy doesn't mean you win the prize, right? That what if there's another way where you just get to be happy and being right doesn't seem as important as it used to be? I am happy. Will you say that with me? I am happy. Just for grins. One more time. I am happy. Has anybody ever been in a work situation or a home situation or a life situation where you felt like it was almost inappropriate to be happy? Like you couldn't get any happier because there was suffering in some other part of the world, or you had a family member that was suffering, or somebody was going through this or that. It's like, well, I don't really have to be the right to be happy because there's trouble. Is there trouble in the world? Jesus said, in the world there's tribulation, but be of good cheer, for I have overcome the world, right? So what I want us to look at tonight over and over and over again is the stories that you tell yourself, the belief, the drama that you tell yourself that keeps you from being profoundly happy. Because I want you to touch the ecstasy of God. I want you to actually open that as a possibility for your life, that you could just be profoundly happy. And how much that depends on your faith. Because I don't think we can get to being profoundly happy without also deepening and broadening our relationship with God, the God in us. So the framework for what I'm doing is this. If you haven't read this book, you need to go steal it from the library. It's called The Happiness Advantage by Sean Anker. And it is a fabulous book. It is a fabulous book. He's Harvard educated. There's a lot of work in Harvard 15, 20 years ago on positive psychology. He was a part of that process. He's now taught the last 20 years all over the world on happiness. And what they have discovered, the scientific aspect of happiness, actually completely lines up with the spiritual aspect of happiness. Because if it's true spiritually and it's true scientifically, I'm betting it's true, right? I'm just going to bet that it's true, right? And so I'm going to give you the introduction. If you observe the people around you, you'll find that most individuals follow the formula that has been subtly or not so subtly taught to them by their schools, their company, their parents, and society, is that if you work hard, you'll become successful. And once you become successful, then you'll be happy. This pattern of belief explains why most of us are often motivated in us in life. We think that if we can get the raise, get the hit, get the next sales target, we'll be happy. If we can just get to the next good thing, the next good grade, we'll be happy. If we lose 5 pounds, then we'll be. And if so, then we'll be successful. And if we're successful enough, then of course we're going to be. The only problem is the formula is broken. Right? Now, if you think about this formula, this idea that if I get everything I want, then I'm going to be happy. If I can kind of put off if I can willing to engage in all the hard work and all the effort and all the madness and all the craziness, there's going to be a point that I finally get happy because I have everything, right? When I have everything, then of course I'm going to be happy, right? That's the belief, right? Now, what I want you to see is that that's not only a cultural belief, right? It's not only a corporate belief and family belief, but what I want you to see is how much that's a spiritual belief. How many of us were raised in a religious environment that said if we suffer or go through all the hard things that we're going through, there's going to be a day when we die on the other side where all the miserable things that we went through somehow become acceptable, and then we become happy, right? So what I want you to see is he doesn't go all the way back, but I want you to see that at the basis of a lot of spiritual thinking is this idea that whatever you're going through right now, it's 100% okay because your reward is coming. And this just isn't even a Christian idea. This is an idea that's throughout so many levels of spirituality, is that if it's terrible now, don't worry. No sweat. And in fact, the more terrible it is, woohoo, right? Because then your reward is coming, right? Now, I have this belief that says that when we get to that place, right? Imagine you've been miserable for 80 years, right? And you die. You're on the other side now. You're ready for the happy times. How emotionally prepared do you think you would be for the happy times if you spent 80 years being miserable? You would be ill-prepared. I think they have a special corner. Oh, send him there, right? Because if you haven't been happy one day on earth, would you be emotionally prepared to take off the shackles of your unhappiness and party like a rock star? No. You would not be prepared. That what I want you to see over and over and over again is that your happiness is established now. And I'm going to make a case because of his work that it actually changes your brain chemistry. And I'm going to make it a case for the next 7 weeks that your success actually accelerates by your happiness. I'm going to make a case that your relationships are going to get better the happier you get, right? That all three of those things have scientific evidence that support that the happier you get, the better your life works. Would you be willing just to engage in a what do you call it when a scientific principle that you haven't proven yet, but it's a hypothesis? Hypothesis. I'm going to suggest that the hypothesis that I have for you today is that while I haven't proven it yet, your happiness is going to change everything for the better. But if you try to get everything better first, it never works that way. That your happiness becomes the most important thing. Tell me what Unity teaches about the inside out. Do you know what we teach about the inside out? That our inner life creates what? Our outer life. Okay, so from a spiritual point of view, if you're miserable on the inside, okay? If you're miserable on the inside, or even slightly miserable, if you're miserable on the inside, what are you creating in your outer world? Things to be miserable about. If you're happy on the inside, what are you going to create? If the inside actually does create the outer world, if our spiritual life actually creates our experience, the happier we get on the inside, can you see that over and over again, that the happiness on the inside creates a life that absolutely becomes more and more a celebration of God's good? And so what we're going to do for the next 7 weeks is emotionally, I'm coming after you. I am. Because I guarantee there's places where you're stuck in your happiness. I believe that there are beliefs, there's drama, there's situations that are stuck points for you that you've accepted that you're happy. Because the reality is that most people, I'm going to say most people believe that they're happy. Right? Most people are happy, believe they're happy, and what I want to begin to play with is I want at least a 50% bump. In the next 7 weeks, I want a 50% bump in your happiness because I want you to be very, very intentional. Speaking in tongues, ladies and gentlemen, heal. Sorry. Just give me a minute. Because we're going to get intentional on our happiness. All right, is that fair? All right, that's where we're going. Let's go. Okay, so one of the stories that he tells is about a story when he was in South Africa. And he was in one of the poorest areas of South Africa, in one of the townships in South Africa. And it was in the early part of his work, it was about 2008. And he was given an opportunity to speak to these kids in a township, and he was trying to make a connection. And his work was mainly done in Harvard. Now, the kids, the college students that he was working with and the professors and stuff at Harvard have a very different life experience than the young people in a township in South Africa. Right? Does that make sense? And so he wanted to connect, even though the majority of his stories were really written from a point of view of people that are probably the most gifted, the most affluent. His stories were all based on that, but he wanted a connection for the kids in South Africa, and so he went for school. And his question was, how many of you really liked school? Thinking like in the U.S. that the majority were going to say, no, I don't like school, right? And what they said was, oh, yes, we love school. And in that moment, he realized that so much of happiness is based on not the outer, but the way that we interpret the outer. Are you with me on that? And those kids lit up thinking about school. Well, why? Well, school was their path out. School was their opportunity to get out of the townships. School was their way of freedom. It wasn't a negative. It was a hope and a prayer. It was life-changing. So one of the things that I want us to really begin to look at is, what are some of the beliefs that you're holding that keep you from being happy? And would you be willing to suspend those beliefs as we play in your happiness? Okay? So the model that most of us grew up with happiness is that happiness was about addition, right? So if you had the right job, the right spouse, the right house, the right car, the right weight, the right clothes, then of course you were going to be happy, right? So happy was really about adding all the things that you were supposed to have. And if there was any one of those things that were missing, you instantly went from the happiness side to the unhappy side, right? So happiness was always about acquiring, which in our culture of, the way our culture is based, acquiring more things, the belief was that we were finally going to get to the point where we have everything we finally need so that we get to be happy. And so we have this cultural norm that says more is better, and too much is just about right. Right? Right? So we just keep acquiring more and more. So what if for the next 7 weeks we don't play the addition game? What if for the next 7 weeks we play the subtraction game? And the subtraction game is radically different than the addition game. Because the subtraction game says, what would I have to let go of to be profoundly happy? Not what I would have to add, but what would I have to let go of? And so when you play the subtraction game, you actually have to look at all the things that are keeping you from being happy, and you have to decide that you're going to subtract those. You're going to let those go. So then we have to begin to look at some of our beliefs. What are the beliefs that you're holding right now that don't make you happy? Does everybody have at least one belief that when you think that thought, when you hold that belief, you instantly are moved from being a state of happiness to less than that? What I want you to begin to see is that your beliefs, your drama, your stories, your unforgiveness, all those things are the things that keep you from being happy. Well, Richard, but I really need those things. Like, I don't get to be complete until I have that. Like, my life is it's not right because I'm not in the job I want or the relationship I want. I don't have the money I want. And we go through all those things that we absolutely believe that we need to have before we get to be happy. And what I'm going to suggest for the next 7 weeks, over and over again, it's a subtraction. That your job is to subtract. So literally, I want you to actually have a happiness notebook, right? And I want you to actually start writing down everything that you'd be willing to let go of to be happy. Now, you don't have to do this, right? But have you ever come into a great insight and then 15 minutes later completely forgot what it was? Because our consciousness has this a way that if it creates too much change or too much havoc or too much pain, we simply go unconscious. And I want you to actually begin to write down those beliefs that make you unhappy so that you can decide over and over and over again if you want to let them go. Now, is there ever a have to? Do you get to have all the cranky, unhappy beliefs you want to have? Yes, you have free will. You were created in the image and likeness of God. You get to have anything you want. But if it's not making you happy, why are you holding on to it? So that's the first one, okay? I want you to begin to subtract where you are. That's your first homework assignment. Did everybody hear that? Okay, second homework assignment is every day I'm going to invite you to give yourself a number between 1 and 10 on how happy you were that day. Because if you're actually monitoring your own happiness, guess what can begin to happen? It can change. So we want to, when it comes to happiness, we want you to go from being unconsciously or unaware to conscious and consciously happy. You think, well, if I become conscious, I might just become conscious of how unhappy I am. There's about a 50-50 shot. Right? But if you become conscious, who has the power to make the change? We do. So the first homework assignment is I want you to begin to monitor what you need to let go of. The second homework assignment, I want you to really begin to ask yourself the question, how happy was I today? And give yourself a number between 1 and 10. How happy was I today? Man, I thought I was happy. I was a 3 today. Man, I was a piece of work. I was a 2 today. Man, I knocked it out of the park. I was a 10 today. And there's people that aren't going to talk to me for a week because I was so happy. Right? And then the third one is your third homework assignment this week is I want you to actually ask yourself, how committed am I to being happy? How committed am I to being happy every day? And I want you to give yourself a number between 1 and 10. How committed are you to being happy? Because what you may find out is that I was a 3 and my commitment to being happy was a 2. And it was just lucky I got to a 3. Right? Because what begins to happen is you get to begin to see, oh, if everything goes my way, I have a high commitment to happiness. If everything doesn't go my way, I really want to be a victim. I want to walk around and tell everybody how unfair life is. I don't have a very high commitment to happiness unless it's all perfect exactly the way I want. I don't want to emotionally dig deep for my happiness. And then what I want you to begin to see is your happiness and your commitment to happiness are actually two different things. And that you actually need both of them. That your happiness and practice being happy every day and practice your commitment to being happy actually are a requirement for you to get happier. Okay? And what you're going to find is how many days you're not very committed to being happy. Because if you were committed to being happy, then you'd be willing to let go to get happy. But really, I just want to walk around and be cranky today. Or really, I just want to walk around and tell everybody what an unfair life I've had. And really today, that is a higher commitment to me than being happy. And if it is, that's okay. I just want you to write it down so that you can see it. Because what we can see, we can heal. What we don't see, we can never heal. And if you're willing to be happier than you've ever been before, I guarantee that you're going to have to let go of some of those choice dramas that you've been holding on to for years. Does everybody have at least 2 or 3 choice dramas? Like stories that you just love to tell. Maybe you've had a small glass of wine and you just go into how unfair everything in your life has been to this point. right? And you have people in your life that will listen to that stuff, right? And so we go into that. So there's 3 things. Over and over and over again, I want you to see, what do I have to let go of? Man, that's a lot. Well, how happy are you? Well, I'm a 2. Well, how committed are you to be happy? I'm a 3. Okay, this is going to be a fairly long process. Right? But over and over again, I want you to come back to your happiness. I am happy. Will you say that with me? I am happy. One more time for grins. I am happy. One more time. I am happy. Okay, there's one more. Actually, I'm going to see if I can get in 2. Okay. So the question is does happiness, is it a cause or a symptom? So how many of you would like to vote that happiness actually causes a greater life? How many of you want to vote that happiness is just a symptom, and then when your life gets better, it's just a coincidence? It really there's no connection there. One of the research studies, and he gives us so many, one psychologist attempted to answer, is it the chicken or the egg, followed a group of people. One study, for example, showed the initial positive emotion of 272 employees that they followed in their job performance for 18 months. 272 people, 18 months, they followed them to see what impact their happiness had on their job. Just their happiness and their job. This is the only thing they studied, right? They found that even those, for controlling other factors, those that were happier at the beginning ended up receiving better evaluations and a higher pay just because of being happy. Another study found that happy individuals and college freshmen predicted a much higher income 19 years later because they were happy, if happiness was the only thing that was monitored. Right? So I want you to see those 2 studies. That happiness alone actually can show a scientific formula study that happiness alone creates greater success. Happiness alone. So the happier you get, it is going to have impact in every area of your life, including, now let me go do another one, and I love this one. One of the most famous long-term studies on happiness was done with 180 nuns from the School Sisters of Notre Dame. The study began in 1917. They went back to these nuns' journal. And what these nuns were required to do as part of their spiritual practice was every day they would write what they were feeling. And then what they began to do in this study, they went back like 80 years later, and what they wanted to see was the nuns when they were happy, what impact did that have over the course of their life? And without a doubt, statistically, the nuns that were happier by the age of 85 were 90% more, a higher probability of still being alive. Well, I want you to hear that. That if you want to live, get happy. If you want to be successful in work, get happy. Right? That over and over and over again. In fact, they actually, when it comes to health, that the people that are scared, they did another study, the people that showed up as unhappy on the test actually took 1.25 more days a month in sick leave and 15 more extra days a year than the happy people. Now, I'm not sure that's an encouragement or not. Right? But the science shows that if you're happy, you actually live longer. You actually are less sick, and you actually are more successful in every level. There's another word that they talk about, because that happiness actually changes your brain function. that when you're sad or unhappy, your brain goes back into survival mentality. It's flight or fight. But one of the psychologists, Barbara Fredrickson, came up with the term broaden and build theory. And her whole premise is, and there's a dozen studies, more than a dozen studies that show this, that the happier you are, the higher level of creativity you bring to every situation, because when you're scared, when you're anxious, you move into fight or flight. When you're happy, you actually move into higher levels of problem solving. You actually unleash your brain's capacity to solve problems that you can't do when you're scared. Okay? Are you with me? So tonight, we're going to begin practicing happiness, right? For the next 7 days, if you choose to play, and you don't have to play, you have a God-given right to be as unhappy as you want to be, right? You have free will. You can be as cranky as you want to be for as long as you want to be, and you can just be broken, sick, and die with everybody else, right? Right? Amen. Right? Let God deal with you, right? Because then you're going to get to the other side and you're going to be cranky and unhappy and anxious, right? So we're either going to heal this and transform our life, or we're going to get another shot. True? We're going to get another shot. I am happy. Will you say that with it? I am happy. One more time. I am happy. Okay. You're going to make a list of everything you need to let go of to be happy. You're going to make a list. You're going to take an inventory every day from 1 to 10. How happy were you that day? And you're going to ask yourself at the end of the day, what's my commitment to happiness? And over and over and over again, you're going to move from being a victim in your own life to being a spiritual master. And you can be a victim. You can. You can tell yourself the world has done you wrong, and you can be right about that. And you can find people that will agree with you, and you can go down that road together. Or you can touch the ecstasy of God. And what I want you to see tonight is that the power of God in you can set you free. And the more you do your spiritual work, the happier you're going to be. Let's pray. I want you to open your mind, your heart, your soul to the activity of God that is right here, right now. And your only job tonight is to be happy. Your only job is to access the infinite goodness of God, to touch the ecstasy of God. I am happy. I'm happy. And every time life goes sideways, or I get upset or disappointed or frustrated, I come back to God. I come back to faith. And I get happy. In the name and through the power of the living Christ, we give thanks. And so it is. Amen.